Hello and welcome to the Fastest 50 podcast, where we're shining a light on entrepreneurial success, growing business and their importance to the economy. I'm your host today, Alistair McDonald, Business Development Director at Ward Hadaway, and today I'm joined by the incredible Paul Callaghan, CBE, co-founder and chairman of Leighton, alongside Andy Carr, who's their CFO. Leighton is a software development company that brings people and technology together to accelerate digital change and help organisations thrive. With over 30 years' experience in software engineering, they help build bespoke software solutions that improve process, integrate systems, and create efficiencies that drive growth. They recently ranked number 10 in the North East Fastest 50, and that recognises them as one of the most successful businesses in the North East region. Paul and Andy, welcome to the Fastest 50 podcast.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to see you both. So I'd like to start at the beginning, if that's all right. You've both had very different entrepreneurial journeys. Paul, if we could start with you, where did it all begin and what led you to found Leighton?
Well, we're going back more than 30 years here. We still have quite a successful publishing business, and that was established in the 1970s. I was obviously a child at the time. But during the 1980s, computers started to be used in business. And I remember buying a computer for the publishing business so that we could do our own typesetting. We then move on to 1991, 92, and it was the start of the internet. And I realized that the typesetting language that was used for putting ink on paper was quite close to HTML, the code that was used to put websites together. And so we decided at this point to set up a business in 1992 called Leighton Internet, named after the street that myself and my siblings grew up in, Leighton Road. We were very much the earliest adopters of the internet. Many people in those days didn't think it was catch on. We began really by developing websites for businesses, and that was really our first 2 or 3 years. We then started to see the opportunities that the internet offered, not just for websites, but for software. And we hired some good software developers in about 1995, and we've taken off since then. And what's happened is that as we've developed businesses, some of them have been spun out as entities on their own, and they are then gone on to be bought, to be merged, to develop on their own. And Leighton is still we call it the mothership.
Right.
It's the place where great ideas are formed, great people work there, often for a long, long time. We have a very well-established staff who've got a lot of experience, who are really good at what they do. And it's great to see us yet again in the Ward Hadaway Fastest 50.
So Andy, from a CFO perspective, what's it been like joining a business that's grown at that pace? And what's your approach to supporting that growth as the CFO?
Yeah, so what's it been like? It's been exciting and challenging in equal measure. So you think, great, the business has grown really quick, but actually off the back of that, you need to make sure you're making decisions in the right time and doing the right things by the people that work there, because just chasing growth doesn't necessarily maintain culture or do the right thing for your customers. Yeah. So it's about getting that balance right. And if you remember back 5 years ago, we were in the midst of COVID now. So I joined at a time when the business had lost some projects and it was reshaping what it wanted to be. So it was quite an exciting time to join, to become part of that journey with the leadership team. But actually every decision you made at that point was really vital, because we weren't making money. We were trying to make very small profits, and one wrong decision could throw you off. So that's the bit when I say it's challenging. Yeah. It was making sure that the decisions we were making were right. So you almost, in hindsight now, when we look back, we should have made some decisions sooner, but you're acting with caution, not knowing what the world was going to be like. But off the back of that, it has been very exciting. I mean, we've had numbers, 90% growth, 61% growth. We've been in the 30s, which is the thing that gets you in the fastest 50 list. So it's been an amazing journey. If I look back, it was just over 2 million revenue the first year I joined, and we're on track to be probably close to 11.5 million this year, headcount has gone from 34 people the day I joined. We're now at 110. So to create all those jobs, and a lot of them in the Northeast, it's been really exciting, and watching people develop. And like Paul says, a lot of the people I'm working with were there when I started and are still there now, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's a good sign, isn't it? And I think, people look at growth and they look at it as being, that's the panacea and that's what you've got to get after, but they don't realise the challenges and the difficulties of it, and the hard decisions that you have to make to make those sorts of things happen. So it's interesting.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Andy's talking about COVID as being a crisis point, but I think over the 30 years, we've most probably had about 2 or 3 or 4 of these.
So I suppose, how do you prepare a business for that?
You have very clever people working.
Right, yeah.
That's the key. I always say I appoint people who are cleverer than me. It's not just about intelligence. It's actually about the culture that's developed, how they treat not only customers, and I think that's quite important, but also how they treat the staff. And James Bunting, who's the chief exec, started with us in the late 1990s, went off to work for one of our spin-out businesses, and then has come back into the company. And that's really a reflection of what he experienced when he first started working for us as a young man, and he's brought all that experience back to the business now, and that's what we're trying to encourage.
And was there anything that happened in those early days as you were kind of learning how to run the business and you're having those early stages of growth that influenced the business as it grew and developed, and what were the challenges in the early days?
I think what you were always trying to do was to run a business that was profitable, sustainable, and ethical. I think we've always sort of prided ourselves in being people who want to run a business that's decent, that pays its tax. What we want to be is much more part of the business community here. And it's interesting that you go to an event, Dynamo or one of the tech events here, and you meet so many people whose careers started with us. And they've then gone off and either established their own business or working for somebody else. And they talk fondly about their period when they were straight out of university or second or third job and coming working for us. And you could see that talent. And the whole thing about talent is recognizing talent and giving it its head with certain constraints, but essentially encouraging people who are good at what they do to actually get better at what they do. And if that then means that they go off and set their own business up, well, that's great. You encourage that, because what we're also trying to do is to develop a software ecosystem. It's a word I don't particularly like, but it expresses what we're trying to do here in the Northeast. Make it a powerhouse, and some fantastic businesses here in the Northeast, and we're very proud to be one of them.
So you mentioned talent there, and that's whether that's an architectural business or a construction business or a tech business, like that's absolutely critical. And you mentioned the clever people that you've surrounded yourself with. Like, do you still focus on the Northeast as a place to get that talent, or do you look globally now, or has that changed?
Online working is much more prevalent. Our client base is much more diverse and more widespread, international, and therefore, both with Leighton and other companies in the Leighton Group, we're able to actually operate satellite offices at various places, and also have people who essentially work from home. And so the constraints of the Northeast have been reduced. It has advantages and disadvantages. When you had to employ people from the Northeast, you felt as though you were making a real impact on the number of jobs. It's possible to hire somebody in Europe or in America or in India. And while that's great for the business, perhaps it doesn't help the Northeast as much as it used to. But nevertheless, actually, the businesses are headquartered here. The strategy is made here. And therefore, what we're doing is we're using global talent rather than simply just Northeast talent.
It sounds as if, when you reference the people that you've met at the Dynamo Awards and stuff, you've been an incubator for success in the region. And it's just, I think there's a lot of talent in the Northeast, and it's great to see that that's been recognised, and but also that you've got that global focus. So do you want to touch on that, Andy?
We have got a national within the UK footprint of our colleagues. So that's from Scotland all the way down to the south coast. Yeah. Probably a couple of reasons for that. I think Paul touched on one. We've got customers around the country. We have to be conscious that we want We want people where our customers are,
Yeah.
as well as having access to come to our offices and our events as well. So one of our focuses when we recruit is we do have a north first approach if we can. So a lot of our customers are in the north, our head office is in the north, and so we will often look for people that are in the north to come and join us, and it makes it easy for them to then be with our customers, come to the head office a bit easier. But sometimes if you're looking for a really specialist skill or role or the right person, then we do have to look outside of the north. We went through a period probably about 2-3 years ago where tech talent was really scarce.
Right.
Salaries were going up and up, and actually it was then about how do we get the right person. So geography limits were a little bit less restrictive, or we didn't put as many restrictions on that geography limit. Whereas now, I think that market's it's calmed down a little bit. It's enabling us to want to recruit in the north a little bit more, to where we want to create jobs, particularly in the northeast, but definitely in the north. So that's where our focus starts initially.
So staying with you, Andy, as you start to work with a business that's had steady growth and then really rapid growth, and whether that's influenced by external events or something that you've done internally or your strategy or whatever, like how do you balance that, and how do you make sure that the risks that the business are taking are appropriate to what you're doing and help you meet your goals?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's about taking balanced risks, so you can't do everything at once.
Right.
I think you have to pick the ones that you think you will get the best reward for at that point in time. So that's often, if we sit down as a leadership team, there'll be lots of things we want to do.
Right.
It's about what can we do first, pick them in a priority order, but definitely the review stage afterwards. What did we get right? What isn't working? And be willing to change it, and be willing to hold your hands up and say, we've got that bit wrong. Right. Let's slightly change what we're doing now. I think that's probably one of the key bits. If you can't learn from what you're doing, then you're never going to continue to grow and develop as a person and a business.
So one of the things that is that Leighton brings people and technology together. Like, how does that work in practice?
With customers, it's how do we build something for them, but them feeling like if they're just going to outsource, and why don't they go abroad? Why don't they go for cheaper rates? I think what we want to give them is you're getting that really good level of service, you're getting high quality, you're getting people that will spend time with you and build those relationships and really understand what you want. So we do pride ourselves on, we don't just take a customer brief and go, oh, that's great, they've asked for A, B and C, let's give them that. Because we've worked on multiple projects, we can look at that and say, actually, have you thought about D, E and F? Or we can challenge their thinking a little bit as well. And I think that's where the real value comes into combining that people and technology. And in the end, hopefully all customers will feel like they've got a better solution through working with Leighton, right, than if they just came and said, build this exactly as I've said. I can't think of a single customer project where we don't want to work with them, and we have a discovery phase before we even start, where it's understanding what they need, so we can offer that insight. That's what they're coming to us for. That's what they're paying for. If we just done what they said, then they'd probably go somewhere else, probably offshore, to get that at a cheaper rate.
It's how you stand out from the crowd, and it's about client service, and that's absolutely critical.
You take pride in that, where you develop that portfolio of great customers.
Yeah.
And it's about reputation, but it's actually about delivery. It's what we do and how we treat people. And as I say, it's treating both your customer well, but also keeping your staff. Yeah. You want the same people there, and they do that. So it's both sides.
So just on that point, you mentioned the Dynamites Award, which is a tech sector awards here in the Northeast. You didn't mention that you won Outstanding Place to Work, so I'll mention that and congratulate you on that again. How, in practice, have you developed that culture, and how do you maintain it? Because that's not easy.
I think that what you're trying to do is to make people feel as though they're part of the business, not simply an employee. Some people might only work for us for 6 months and they go. Other people work for us for 25 years and they stay. And that's because we have a similar ethic, we have a similar view of the world, and that actually is built into the whole organisation. And I think that's quite important.
Yeah, I think it definitely starts with what was put in place back when Leighton was started. When we recruit, we always have 2 people in the interview. One's doing technical, Can you do the job?
Yep.
One's assessing cultural fit. Will you fit within Leighton? You're then getting people in the organisation that you want to be there, they want to be there. You can see they're a really good fit. And then it's about trusting them and letting them kind of lead the way. And yes, they'll make mistakes. Yes, they'll do great things as well. But it's about learning from it and giving them that trust and responsibility and allowing them to work with that freedom. I think if you've got restrictions on people, that's really difficult. What we then do is we try and put in place things that people want. So we survey our teams regularly, and we ask them what's important to them. I'm sure if we look at our overall offering and benefits package now, it's probably completely different to 20, 30 years ago, but that's about things change. Ask the team what's important to them, make changes, get it tweaks along the way. There's nothing big that we've done in that space. It's more gradual listening, gradual tweaks to what people want, making sure it's a really good place to work. So that's working with good customers. It's bringing good colleagues into the business. It's that listening piece I've just talked about. It's not just one thing that does it. It's a lot of small things that make it a great place to work.
Is there one aspect of that makes you most proud in terms of, is it the growth, the finance, the recognition, the people like?
It's wonderful to have a successful, if you measure success simply in terms of the balance sheet, it's great to have a successful business, but it's also great to be part of a business that's actually made a real impact in the Northeast. I went to that Dynamos Award and I was proud not just of us, but of the sector as a whole.
Right.
What you hope is that kids coming through actually now see that as a career path. Many of my contemporaries thought that the only way to get on in a career was to go to London or wherever. And now seeing businesses like ours and the other businesses that we've been talking about are in the Fastest 50 give people that ladder for achievement. And I think that's really, really important. And so if we can establish the Northeast, as we have done, as a hotbed of technology, that's great. That gives me real pride.
You've developed a really successful business and it continues to be really successful. And you've mentioned that sort of relationship with the wider sort of ecosystem. Is there any advice that you would give to anybody listening to the podcast who is looking to scale their business or grow their business? What advice would you give to budding entrepreneurs?
About 20 years ago, I was asked to give a speech at the Fastest 50 top tips for tip-top entrepreneurs. And I won't tell you the whole 50 of them, but 2 or 3 things which I think are important is one, to see that your business is about people, not about money. Your market is the world, not just the Northeast. And take things seriously, but not too seriously. Understand that business is part of it, not all of it. And what the Northeast has to offer, and why things like Dynamo are so important, is that we like to support each other.
We've been thrilled to support you at various different stages on your journey as you've grown. I'm interested to know what qualities you look for when you're appointing professional advisors, and what helps people to stand out from the crowd. Really,
you're looking for commerciality. You actually have to understand how businesses operate, and you've got to understand when time is of the essence, and when you need to get things done, you need to get things done. And what I've always liked about Ward Hadaway is that understanding of what business is about, not just about what the law is about. So I think that's very important. And you also then, it's developing a personal relationship with people. It's if you like the guy who's or the woman who's actually doing the deal with you, it makes it much easier.
We've talked about the sort of global markets, but we've talked about the Northeast as well. And I think some of the emerging businesses locally, I see our guys talking the same language, often having the same accent as them, and it's not intimidating. And I think if we can establish those relationships early doors, we'll hang on to them and we'll support companies as they grow, and that's what we're looking to do.
Just your Fastest 50 project, which has been going now for 20 years, is an example of that. You're actually looking there to support the sector, not just the tech sector, but the industrial sector, the commercial sector in the region. And I think that encourages people.
Yeah.
You're not just a distant law firm. You're actually there on the ground with people who are trying to make a difference.
No, it's important to all of us. It's important to me to be involved in communities, and I'll touch on something that we've worked together on a little bit as well. But lots of my colleagues are they're active in their communities, not just in out looking for business sort of way. They're really contributing to what goes on. So, I guess from your point of view, Andy.
Yeah, it's really similar to what Paul said, and almost similar to when you're looking for somebody to join your team. You want the professional advisors have to be able to do the job. They have to prove they can do the job. But I'm going to call it cultural fit or relationship building is really important as well. I think if you're going to spend 14 hours locked in an office with someone doing a deal, you want to know that, as Paul said, yes, they can find a way to get that done for you as well, but actually that you work well with them and have that good relationship. And I think your business and our business is really similar in that you can't just pick up a phone and sell something to someone. It is all about that relationship building and spending time with people and understanding their business and what they want and how you can help. I think that's what then leads to becoming a future customer. The cold calling world doesn't exist in our kind of business.
But we've never had a commander of the Order of the British Empire on the podcast. So you were awarded the CBE in 2012. Do you want to just tell us what that meant to you?
I was on the board of One North East from about 2007, and I sort of ended up being chairman of One North East just as the government changed in 2010, and Margaret Fay had been chairman ahead of me and was an excellent chair. But of course, the incoming government decided that they were going to abolish the RDAs, which was a mistake. I mean, I'm 15 years on here, and I still think it's one of the big mistakes. But one of the things that happened was they had a period where they needed a lead RDA to ensure that the assets of all of the RDAs actually were correctly accounted for and didn't end up in the wrong hands. And so I was given the chair of chairs of all of the RDAs from 2010 until 2012. You weren't developing things. What you were doing is you were making sure that an asset in Weston-super-Mare went in the right hands. But I spent 2 years working with the then coalition government, and I got on extremely well with secretaries of state and ministers of state, but also with civil servants. And the civil servants were quite important in this because they were doing what their political masters were telling them. And we were talking about big money. It was £3 or £4 billion worth of assets. And we got to the end of that 2 years where finally we locked the door. And almost out of the blue, well, completely out of the blue, I get a letter saying that they'd like to give me an award. And you don't ask for these things, you're given them. And I was delighted to go down and get the CBE. And it's something I am proud of, but it's something that I'm not obsessed about. It was a very nice award, and winning any award's always nice, and it's a bit of an ego boost. But at the end of the day, my dad always used to say, you judge people about what they put back into society rather than what they take out of society. And I think that's really my view of the world a little bit.
Well, that actually leads very nicely onto something that I just wanted to touch on before we wrap up. So, I'm a business development director at a successful growing law firm, but a few years ago I used to work in the healthcare sector, and I was lucky enough to establish a music festival that was called Chase Park, and it was designed to be accessible to people with disabilities. You mentioned Sunderland Software City. I think Sunderland Music City is a great project, and there's a lot going on in Sunderland at the moment. And I think if you look at other parts of the country, you see massive regeneration projects and you see huge investment going into places, but they can be quite soulless if they haven't got the cultural element. So I don't know if you just want to touch on Sunderland Music City and the wider
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen civic regeneration as having three pillars, one of which is business. You've got to develop an economy, you've got to develop businesses that offer careers that actually are sustainable in the long term. And I think with Leighton and with other businesses, we've managed to achieve that. The second thing which I think is important is education. And that's education for all. And the North East traditionally has had a relatively low take of higher education. And over the last 10, 15 years, we've started to see that change. More kids going into university or staying on for further education. And I think that's very, very important, because when you look at the Manchesters or the Londons, they have a much higher percentage of kids in university. So I've been chairman of the university, I've been professor at Newcastle, various things over the years. But then the third element, that third pillar, is culture. Because you can have a wonderful job, you can have your kids being educated, but if there is nothing happening in the place, then you'll go somewhere else. So what you've got to do is you've got to create a culture which is right. It's not imposed upon people. It's what people want to be involved in and want to enjoy, both as participants and as audiences. And what we've tried to do is use music as a catalyst for this. I mentioned I was chair of chairs of the RDAs. When I left that in 2012, we decided we would try and develop something in the cultural sector. We set up a thing called the Music, Arts and Culture Trust, the MAC Trust. And that over the years has done things like festivals and programmes and buildings like the fire station. But we wanted an international brand. I'd been involved over the years with, I think, 3 bids to try and get international recognition. So this time I was determined that we were going to get something which actually had real meaning and significance. And so we developed the bid and were accepted into the World Music Cities Network. And so we're partnering with Sydney and Berlin and Hamburg and Brussels. I think that what we're now being recognised is how Sunderland, but the North East as a whole, is using that to actually change the lives of people and how people outside the region perceive us. And I think it's a very exciting time.
Excellent. Well, just to wrap up, that's been great. I've really, really enjoyed that. I think a few observations are that, you've clearly created an enormously successful business that's sustained success over a long period of time, which is absolutely excellent. It's clear that the people, both in terms of your people, but your clients are absolutely key to that ongoing success. And it feels very much that there's an altruistic nature to the business in terms of, yes, having a good balance sheet and yes, giving people good jobs, but contributing to the ecosystem, contributing to the culture. And it's brilliant to have you guys in the list, and I'm really grateful for you coming in today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.